In November of 2022, I got my ADHD diagnosis and finally found out what was wrong with me. So I decided that 2023 would be the start of my reader era. I'm Liv, and today I'm gonna rank all my first reads of 2023 from worst to best, because that's the correct way, I guess. I'm gonna give each entry a very brief synopsis, and spoilers are kept to a bare minimum. I guess this could be categorized as spoiler-free, but I'm gonna complain and or praise the books, and that's gonna reference, what's in it. So if you're like me and you like going into a book completely blind and you see one that you're interested in, I advise you to skip to the next entry. I'm not including rereads and mangas or visual novels in this ranking because, books are already so varied and difficult to compare. Including ones that I already had a connection with, or a completely different type of media, would just make things impossibly complicated. Lastly, this ranking is based mostly on how much fun I had while reading. If I wasn't sure about a certain placement, I took other things into consideration, but it always came down to the fun aspect. So let's roll the intro and then jump into the ranking. Short story book by Shirley Jackson. Yeah. Oh Lord. Yeah, by far the worst book I read this year was The Lottery and Other Stories. I know that part of my distaste was because I had extremely high expectations for this book. I love We Have Always Lived in the Castle. It's one of my favorite books ever. But even if I try to ignore the fact that Shirley Jackson is the person who wrote one of the best books in human history, it's still not good. What was this book? And I'm gonna be real with you, publishing companies. You cannot advertise Shirley Jackson as terrifying in the year of our Lord 2023. Everything is obsolete and outdated. It's not terrifying. It's not scary. Advertising it as such is just gonna hurt the sales, you know what I mean? Because all of the stories have some sort of message behind them, but all of them are either too obvious or too subtle, and they're kind of shallow. Oh wow, people from the countryside gossiping and are racist? I would have never guessed. I only liked The Tooth, Elizabeth, and The Lottery. And this book has 50 short stories. Yeah. And by the way, The Lottery isn't even that good. It's a classic and stuff. I have seen printings of The Lottery. Just The Lottery. I don't know how they filled, even this little teeny tiny small book. It's a really short story. It's maybe 13 pages, And it's not amazing. The Tooth is the best short story. And Elizabeth is the most, it isn't obsolete. I don't know, just read We Have Always Lived in a Castle. Don't waste your time. Maybe read the ones that I said I like, if you trust my opinion. But don't. This is the second book in a trilogy that follows Claude and Lucy in a literal heap of trash. So, when it comes to Fausham, I liked some of the ways the story developed, but honestly, I can barely remember what happened in this one. You know when someone asks you if you remember the summer of a particular year and you're there like,
Huh?
but then they mention something specific that happened and you're like, oh yeah, this book is that summer for me. Oh wow, another short stories book from an author that I love because of a non-short story book of theirs and that made my expectations go through the roof. My dad also loves this book, so that just made my expectations even higher. The stories are basically adult has weird conversation with child over and over and over again. The only two stories I liked were the only two that weren't like that. And one of them still featured a child. Like, now I understand the allegations. Back when I had only read The Catcher in the Rye, I was like, what are these allegations? Like, it's normal, it's his sister. Like, that they're close and stuff. But now, reading this book, I'm like, oh, okay, I see it. Also, something else that my dad said in his praises of this book was that the conversations are so, like, realistic. And, like, no, people don't talk like that. And it isn't even like, oh, the book is old. Obviously, people don't talk like that anymore. But the people in 9 Stories, they will say something, and that the other person won't even like nod in acknowledgement. They would just say something completely unrelated as a response. And like, people don't talk like that. That characteristic kinda took me out of it sometimes. On the bright side, I always use Uncle Wiggily in Connecticut to exemplify how Shirley Jackson could have made her 40s women issues stories have a bit more depth. This is a short story book that is linked to a trilogy that I love with all my heart. But I guess I just have to accept that short stories aren't my thing. My copy of this book looks... it has seen better days, but it's not because I read it and I read it again. It's because it gave me theory. It gave me theory fodder. So I just, highlighted everything in the book. But yeah, like, the stories weren't very compelling to me, and even if the story in itself had stakes, which not all of them had, it kind of kills the mood when you're reading a book that is fictional in universe. Some of the stories are really charming though, and there are some quotes that are just amazing. Like, listen to this description. And what red, slick wet red, sparkling like sunshine, thick and rich as paint, gleaming like a pricked finger, like a stormy dawn, like first love. Like, sometimes this book slaps, but most times not. Someone, me, didn't read the very obvious subtitle, so I was expecting a really grotesque medieval cases book, but I guess someone here forgot to read the cover. It's about different medicines throughout history. It's interesting and all, but there's only so much they took this weird substance and shoved it up their asses a person can take before it becomes repetitive. This is the third book about the almighty trash heap. I don't know, I liked the way it ended, I guess. It was definitely better than Faushan. It had actually distinctive scenes and places I could remember when I finished the book. But I guess I only read this trilogy because it was kinda there in my shelf, left over from my teen years. And I'm not a teen anymore, so these books aren't booking for me. I promise this will be brief. I've talked about this book for a lifetime already. A really common review for The Hunchback of Notre Dame is saying that Notre Dame is the main character, which I didn't see at all when I read it. But it 100% applies to Kingsbridge. Forget any synopsis you've ever read, this book is about the construction of Kingsbridge. Yeah, you spent 1,000+ pages with the human characters, but there's next to no character development. Interesting things are accidental, things just sorta happened around them, and it drags. I guess I have to give credit for it being bearable and engaging enough to make me read through 1,000+ pages, so yeah. Short story book by various authors, showcasing the underrated vampire stories. If you like vampires, I think you're gonna enjoy this. Don't let displacement discourage you, but they are simply way down my favorite monster list. Alas, this book found its way to my hands and I read it. Most stories are alright, some are pretty good, and a select few are, oh my god, what do you mean this isn't a classic of the genre? Please don't come for me, Edgar Allan Poe stans. I've shown my streak of not liking short stories. I liked this more than I thought I would, but I think reading these back to back takes away from the vibe, which I really liked. I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I feel like his ideas would be better as images or songs, because the ending is always kinda wonky in my opinion, but the backdrop is fantastic. A look on the concept of ugliness over the centuries in Western society. Okay, so imagine you're in a museum, and the tour guide is a little bit insane. He starts out by talking about ugliness, but he soon delves into a 3-hour rant about the Bible. All very interesting, as your guide is really intelligent and well-read, but you sort of forget why you're here. Then you're back to talking about ugliness, but not in a very focused way. Sometimes it's about ugliness in art, other times it's about ugliness in people, and your guide doesn't really delve into some aspects that you consider relevant. Also, he often randomly starts quoting a variety of books. It's fascinating, but you were kinda expecting to learn more. That's the book. A book about the death industry, going over details of cremation, embalming, and ponderings about death. I really liked this one. There were a lot of things that I didn't know. I guess my only complaint is that the writing style felt a touch too juvenile. Like, come on girl, you're detailing how corpse fat started flowing out of the cremation oven. You don't need to talk to me like that. I guess this is kinda low because this is not what I usually read, but I liked it. This is the first Trash Hip book, and I loved it so much more. The scenes were so vivid in my brain, the stakes felt so real, all the trash and gloomy faces of the story. I just loved it. Again, what's holding it back is that I've read better books this year, and this is like young adult, I think. So, not going as deep as it could. But considering that I'm reading it as an adult, it's good. It's good. A Brian Jones biography. It's well written, makes some interesting points and everything, but listen. Brian Jones died in 1969. It's been too much time. I know that this book was published in 1999, so not as much time had passed, but still, 30 years is the longest time. That, plus the fact that this is an extremely philosophical look on his life, comparing Brian to other people the author thought represented a similar archetype, made me feel so detached to him. It would have been so easy to make me cry, because I'm so attached to Brian. And during a passage that should have tugged at my heartstrings because it was so similar to something I went through, nothing. I haven't read any other Brian biographies, so I don't know how exactly they compare, but I'm not expecting much more considering that all the information we have on him is secondhand at the very, very best. Also, he was murdered, 100% he was murdered. Essay, asylums, murders, justice, and it's YA, by the way. I know that this description sounds weird, but it balances itself out. A lot of heavy themes, but they're not really described in sordid detail, so you don't feel absolutely sick while reading it, but it still delivers its points. There's also a mystery to keep you hooked, which is always nice, and it's not groundbreaking, but I liked it. Cyberpunk, FBI agents try to solve a crime, sickness that traps you in your body and you have to go through life piloting a robot. I'm happy I waited for the cyberpunk oversaturation to die down before picking this one up. It's fun, interesting concept, interesting conflict, there's a mystery, and it's so easy to visualize I'd be willing to bet that the author wrote it with a movie adaptation in mind. Not groundbreaking, but it's not the eye-roll, same old cyberpunk android moral dilemma, so I think it was worth it. Okay, hear me out, please hear me out. I've read all 3 Gentleman Bastard books this year. This one was simply not it. Wait, for those who don't know, this is the 3rd book in a fantasy series that follows a gang of thieves getting up to some radical shenanigans. You wanna hear something really funny? I didn't know that this is gonna be a septology or whatever until I finished reading Republic of Thieves. But even ignoring my anger and frustration, I think there's a little too much focus on the personal aspect of the story, while the radical shenanigans are just an afterthought we couldn't care less about. There are other things that I'm not gonna be like, this is bad, because it is gonna be smoothened out by the next books, this is clearly a middle part of the storybook. But can I just say, number 1, hated the plot twist. Number 2, there's one scene where someone is being healed and blacks out and sees another someone and they talk, and that scene is way too intense for the payoff to just be you're hallucinating. I need answers. I obviously did enjoy it, but it was driving me up the wall, not gonna lie. Sherlock Holmes Solves Mysteries. This book is a lot like High School Musical 3. It's fine to have 1 or 2 scenes that are like, hey, we're saying goodbye, but not the whole thing. It's still Sherlock Holmes, so I did enjoy it, but God, stop rubbing it in my face that Sherlock and Watson don't live together anymore. I know that they're old. I know it. Just shut up. Sexism and Abuse and Racism, and it's a journal. I know, a classic and stuff, but go back to what I said in the beginning. It comes down to the fun aspect. I did read this one in 2 days, and it's written in an interesting way, and it deals with a lot of serious topics, but not in a way that makes the read absolutely unbearable. I can see why it's a classic, and I did enjoy reading it, but I simply had more fun with other reads, and I think that's very normal of me. Sherlock Holmes solves a single mystery. One mystery. I've been in a read all the Sherlock Holmes books mission for a few years now, and this is the first Sherlock Holmes novel, like one story over the entire novel, that I actually liked. I liked the mystery and the explanation, and it didn't drag at all, like others. It's Dave Grohl's memoir. I'm not usually one for memoirs, but this book is so fun, and also I read like maybe 4 memoirs this year, I don't know. Maybe I'm starting to have a taste for it. I don't know if he got a ghostwriter or if he actually wrote the stories, but like, if he did, he's really talented, and the stories just flow and it's so fun to read, and there's a sprinkle of heart-wrench here and there. It's like your uncle telling you stories. Sherlock Holmes solves more mysteries. It's kinda weird how, even though the possibilities are kinda limited because Sherlock Holmes, detective who allegedly is only seeking knowledge and nothing else, is always exclusively helping respectful citizens. It's weird how even then the stories hold up and it never gets truly stale. Now I'm really curious about the Sherlock Holmes stories other authors have written. It's a history book about the Targaryen family. Okay, so here's something about me. I don't have any patience for TV series, but I do have the patience for these absolute tomes. ADHD powers activate! So yeah, I'm not watching the series, but something good that came of it is that Fire and Blood just showed up in a convenient bookstore and I bought it. Now, this isn't for everyone. If no one's told you yet, it's literally an in-universe storybook. No private scenes or secrets or exciting battle scenes. I guess my only explanation as to why I enjoyed Fire and Blood is that I care deeply about this universe, and I love exploring Westeros in any capacity. Very fantasy novel about a mysterious guy who has a tavern, recounting his mysterious adventures. At first I was like, oh no, logic has fled the chat with this one. And don't get me wrong, I still think that. I'm not someone who instinctively goes out of my way to find plot holes, so like, you can trust me when I say that these are just lapses in judgment that are extremely obvious. There's a lot of, oh, how convenient moments. The protagonist is the Mary Sue of all Mary Sues. More than once, there's that annoying thing where someone says, if this was a story, X, Y, and Z would have happened, but it isn't. And then 2 seconds later proceeds to describe the most fantasy novel event I've ever heard. Because of all that, this book feels sorta YA, but the writing and length make me just confused. Who is this for? And like, I'm not bashing the main character for not making logical decisions 100% of the time, but he is recounting his past. He points out his young stupidity and naivety several times throughout the book, except when he's being actually bafflingly dumb. Well, why is this ranked so high up then, I hear you ask? It's fun to read. Period. Three novellas set in the A Song of Ice and Fire universe about a knight and his weird squire. I enjoyed Knight of the Seven Kingdoms because I am, in fact, a simp. Again, love exploring Westeros in any capacity. I think I would have enjoyed the kinda road trip vibe if I was in the right mindset for it. And I love the battle scenes so much. I love this man's writing. I have, like, one of my shelves is just Mary's mom dies, and her last wish was for Mary to live with Aunt Patience and her husband at the mysterious Jamaica Inn. Okay, yeah, it's not as good as Rebecca, we get it. But it's still so good! Daphne knows how to set an atmosphere and describe a place, like I was there. It is extremely descriptive, but not in an annoying way. It's in a tense way, and I know that someone will probably be like, nah, that is the very definition of annoying description. But I like it. Also, I really liked Mary. I feel the need to point that out because I love Rebecca but hated all the main characters. So good to see that it was intentional and not just Daphne's style to write annoying main characters. I guess the only hiccup was that, like, how can I say it without giving anything away? The first big moment and revelation probably carried more of a punch at the time it was published. Nowadays it's just sorta, oh okay, that's it. But that's all I can think of in terms of criticism. Horror classic about a mysterious family and 3 Victorian houses in the middle of nowhere. I really like this one. It would definitely be higher up on the list if I hadn't read I Am Behind You, which is, let's say, heavily inspired by the Elementals. Not the things that happen, but the vibes are almost identical, at least how I imagined it. I was just a little confused by how can I put this without spoiling it. There are a lot of things happening, and in the end I feel like some of them are explained and all tied up in the same story, but a few other things aren't, And it's not a case of it's horror, it doesn't have an explanation. Because all the things that felt kinda left to the side by the end, all related to one thing, so it felt like they were building up to something. But anyways, really liked it, and I feel like its spot as a horror classic is deserved. Second book in the Thieves Radical Shenanigans series. I loved Red Seas and the Red Skies. It has probably one of the most epic scenes I've ever read. What knocks it down is the beginning is a little bit clunky. I kinda didn't know what to care about and what not to care about, but once the Red Seas and the Red Skies part begins, it's all smooth sailing. Steamboats, vampires, grrr, New Orleans, slavery, unusual friendship. I've told you, I'm a grrr simp, and I love ships, sea, water, any combination of the three. Reading this book felt like the author was swinging me around the room and hitting my head against the furniture after a random number of spins, and I loved every second of it. Three friends don't know what to do with their lives, kinda don't wanna do anything. I don't know how to describe this book. I love Douglas Coupland. Coupland? Anyways, he'll just write things that hit you right on your Achilles heel. Like, listen to some of the quotes from this book. The world has gotten too big, way beyond our capacity to tell stories about it. Okay, yes, I think to myself, they were ugly times, but they were the only times I'll ever get. And any small moments of intense, flaring beauty such as this morning's will be utterly forgotten, dissolved by time like a Super 8 film left out in the rain, without sound and quickly replaced by thousands of silently growing trees. Everybody has a gripping stranger in their lives, Andy. A stranger who unwittingly possesses a bizarre hold over you. Maybe it's the kid in cutoffs who mows your lawn, or the woman wearing wide shoulders who stamps your book at the library. A stranger who, if you were to come home and find a message from them on your answering machine saying, "Drop everything, I love you. Come away with me to Florida," you'd follow them. 2 days later, I was back in Oregon, back in the New World, breathing less crowded airs. But I knew even then that there was still too much history there for me, that I needed less life, less past. Okay, I believe I've made my case. Moving on. This is Mark Lanegan's memoir, and listen, I love this. This isn't for everyone. If 400 pages of trauma and addiction and bad stuff happening told in a fashion of, look how stupid I was when I was young, and that sort of humor that doesn't come in jokes, but in the way things are described and worded, this isn't the book for you. Mark admitted to things that, like, the CIA wouldn't be able to get me to admit. It's fascinating. I really liked his sense of humor. After a while, you get used to the misery of it all and can laugh at things too. Surprisingly, what got me the most was the way he talked about his friends. It was so heartwarming. I don't know what else to say without trauma dumping on you, so we're gonna move on. A journalist writes about Joe Gould, a homeless man who claimed he was writing the longest book ever written, an oral history of our time. I did not, at all, expect to like this as much as I did. The journalist Joseph Mitchell recalls his experience interviewing and subsequent acquaintanceship with Joe Gould, giving us a glimpse into his madness. And it is all leading up to his secret. I don't know why, while reading, I forgot that there was a secret. But there is. It wasn't even a case of like, oh my god, I need to find out what his secret is. Just the whole book is so gripping and I love this so much. I don't even know what to say. Thieves, Radical Shenanigans, Volume 1. I love the characters, I love the mystery, I love how convoluted it gets. This book is just very entertaining and solid and fun. It also works as a standalone, so if you don't want to be stuck in "we're waiting for the author hell," just read this one and consider it done. Dorian Bridges' memoir. Early 2000s, goth clubs, addiction, love, trying to self-medicate, your loose screws, your own damn self. Now, I might be a bit biased because I love Dorian's YouTube channel, but fellas, this book is amazing. I think everyone who has dead idols has fantasized about living in that scene and getting to meet them and stuff, me included. And I've always been, at least rationally, aware of the things that wouldn't be available to me in the past, but I only truly understood it once I read this book. I wouldn't have survived to meet them. I wouldn't have survived to do anything. I love the way Dorian writes as if we're his younger sibling following along. And even though Millennium Gothic involves pretty serious themes, his writing makes it not super heavy unless it's meant to be. I'm looking at you, big mass scene. And it's also hopeful. Maybe you really will grow up calm and clean as an Icelandic lake. This quote lives in my mind rent-free. And now, the best book I read this year was...
Be a soldier, Preston!
Be a soldier, Preston! Be a soldier!
Story of Chess Prodigy, Beth. Okay, so apparently chess matches can be as intense as battle scenes, and you don't even need to understand what the hell is going on. I didn't expect this book to be number 1. Going into it, I thought, well, it gotta be okay, they chose it for a Netflix adaptation and everything. Well, I couldn't put it down. Again, as I've mentioned, I have no patience for TV series, but I do wonder how they adapted the chess matches. They're super intense because you're in Beth's head with her. It's not the kind of thing that's easily translated to the screen. So yeah, read it. If you didn't know that it's a book, read it. So yeah, thank you so much for watching this video, and I don't know, let me know about books that you've read this year, and I'll make more videos if an anvil doesn't fall on my head. Bye!